Welcome to the Heart to Heart podcast with me, Sinead McKiernan. I aim to host inspiring and empowering conversations around well-being. In this episode, I speak to Niamh Burke, a nutritional therapist based in Galway, specialising in fertility and hormones. I hope you enjoy. Hello, Niamh. Welcome. I'm delighted to introduce Niamh Burke, nutritional therapist based in Galway and specialising in female wellness and balancing hormones and supporting couples through fertility. Have I got it right?
Yeah. I work in the area kind of like all female hormone things. So I've kind of gone down a fertility rabbit hole lately after my own journey. But I do a lot of women with kind of perimenopause, menopause, polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, all those kind of hormonal symptoms, and helping to rebalance the body and just help them feel better. And all the other things that come along with that, like insomnia, low energy, bloating, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot in it. The hormones affect everything basically. So when you give them a good reset, people just feel so much better.
And it's such important work to support women and I suppose educating men on how to support women through, these kind of imbalances in the body and how they can really affect all areas of our lives. Some of the issues that you mentioned there, can we go through them one by one and just educate me and the listeners on what's happening in the body for a woman that might be experiencing each of those issues?
Oh yeah, no problem at all. Interestingly, my own PCOS is what got me really interested in the area of nutrition, because I was getting very strange symptoms. And in fact, actually polycystic ovaries and perimenopause, like a load of the symptoms overlap. One of the main contributors is their blood sugar response. So basically, a young healthy person usually can, eat some sugar and get away with it. If somebody has diabetes or PCOS, diabetes is kind of like similar to PCOS and the blood sugar response aspect of it. They actually call PCOS diabetes of the ovaries. But when you can't control your blood sugars properly, and this is what happens in perimenopause as well, you end up getting these massive peaks and then these massive crashes. And most people won't actually realize when their blood sugars are spiking, but they start getting symptoms when they're in a crash. And these are probably the most common symptoms I see women coming to me with. But so when you are experiencing a blood sugar crash, one of the things that can happen is like the brain does not like it. So it's going to be like, oh, you better eat some sugar here because I can sense that the blood sugars are crashing. So you're going to be getting sugar cravings. You can have like just a very quick mood swing. You could be feeling great 1 minute and the next minute you could feel really kind of like irritable and kind of like angry, and that's because your body responds to that blood sugar crash by releasing the stress hormones. You kind of go into a fight or flight response, and what happens then is that the liver will release some sugar to like help the person escape the danger. And the danger is the low blood sugar, but it's creating a stress response. And sure, our lives are all so stressful anyway, so this is just extra stress that like the body has to deal with in this blood sugar crash. So your cravings, mood changes, and the stress response that happens. The other symptoms you can get is because like you're getting, your energy is crashing because your fuel source is being taken out of energy circulation and being put into fat storage. And when that happens as well, it's much harder to lose weight because people are eating and their food is being stored as fat instead of being used as energy. So people aren't getting the same energy from their meals. And like that's why blood sugar balancing is at the core of all hormone balancing, because this stress response affects the female hormones, it'll affect the thyroid, it'll affect actually the sleep-wake hormones. And one of the things that can happen if you have a blood sugar crash in the middle of the night and this cortisol kicks in is actually you can wake up and you're finding it impossible to go back to sleep. And if you have a blood sugar crash before you go to bed, you won't be able to sleep. You'll just be tossing and turning for hours. And one of the things, like I always try and get balance back to my clients from kind of a root cause, like what's causing it, how can we balance this? But one thing that can help with the sleep issues is actually having a little snack before bed. because it's going to just bring the blood sugars back up, and so that the person can sleep. Because well, you've taught her as well, Sinead, like we know sleep deprivation is like a form of torture, like, and
Always
it's
have a
really
snack
hard.
before bed.
Yeah, it's so hard like to function when you're sleep deprived the next day. It's really hard to manage your cravings. It's really hard to make good choices. It's really hard to feel motivated to look after yourself if you're like running on empty. So with the core of all like my clients, whether they're perimenopausal or they've PCOS or any other kind of hormonal conditions, I'd be like, let's looking at your blood sugars. Do you have some symptoms that your blood sugars are off? Are you getting that 3 p.m. slump? Do you find it hard to go along without food, without getting a sugar craving? How is your sleep? If you're falling asleep okay, but you're tossing and turning and you're not waking up refreshed, that can also be all linked back to your blood glucose as well. So we'd really go in there and like try and fix the blood glucose first. And we might, put in some treat foods that are not high in sugar, because I think everyone still likes to have their chocolates, they like to have their treats. So we might just swap some of those treat foods. If because it's very hard to say to somebody like, don't have any sugar at all, don't have any treats, like that's not realistic. So we might swap some of them out, and we might put some supplements in as well to help their cells use the sugar they are eating better. But overall that will massively take the load off the body. And so basically, instead of going up and down all day, we want to kind of elongated peaks, so you're getting like more energy out of your food. It's lasting you for longer. You're not getting the cravings, and your mood is stabilized as well. So that's like kind of like at the core of what I would do with clients. And I'd look at their diet and I'd say like, how can we tweak this to what you're eating already to just be more blood sugar balancing, and we put in some supplements as well.
So am I right in saying PCOS and perimenopause and diabetes could all have similar symptoms?
Yeah, and interestingly, they did a study. It was called the Catilda study recently. I think it was last year, or it could have been this year. And they released data where they did a study on like thousands of adults over 50, and they found that a third of them were pre-diabetic or had metabolic syndrome. So what happens when you're eating and you're not using your food properly for energy? Usually it starts getting stored around the waist, whereas the most unhealthy place to store it, because that's a really inflammatory fat, and that's where around your organs. It's very kind of disease promoting fat. So we want to try and shift that from happening. And I think like it's really hard because like people are told, go on a diet, lose weight. But first of all, right, when your cells stop, like if you can imagine a cell, right, cell can only take in a little bit of glucose at a time, right? So what's happening with most people is like they're overwhelming their cells with like loads of glucose at a time when they're like inactive, like at their desk or not doing much. It's fine if you're going to the gym to use fast release carbohydrates and sugars because your body will use them. These little cells are getting overwhelmed, they can't use them. So the body will step in and go, like, this blood sugar actually is going to be causing more harm than good. We'll just put it into fat storage, because high blood glucose is very oxidizing on the cells. It's very pro-aging, so the body will want to get rid of that sugar if it's not being used. So if you balance the meals so the food is very slow releasing, the cells love that. They just love to be drip fed, and they'll work really well then. And you'll have a really steady, slow state of energy, and you won't have all those big peaks and crashes and mood changes during the daytime and cravings as well. Like that is like kind of the most optimum way to feed yourself. But what happens is that as we get older, diabetes is kind of like an age-related disorder. Age, lack of muscle, lack of movement, and change in hormones, especially with women, it all kind of leads us down the path of being our actual cells responding less favorably to glucose. Okay. So basically what can happen is that you're eating exactly the same diet, and all of a sudden you can't get away with like having your chocolate in the evening. It actually starts affecting your sleep, whereas you could before. So then you want to put in something else, a snack or a treat that's lower in sugar, and you can do that. Like, I mean, I do have I have keto programs on my website as well. But like you don't necessarily have to do the keto diet to get benefits from having, like, you can use the keto recipes though, like the keto treats, because we know all the keto treats are going to be really low in sugar. So you could have like some keto treats in the freezer to have in the evening times instead of a high sugar chocolate bar. You know, you could just use that aspect of the diet. Or you can use things like, this is one of the things I would love and at the moment, is chicory root syrup. So if you look at something like maple syrup, actually, I do like maple syrup because it's quite nutritious in comparison to, like, say, for example, table sugar. But if you look at maple syrup, it's between 60 and 70% pure sugar. Chicory root syrup tastes, you can get it actually in a lot of supermarkets now and the health food stores, but actually tastes kind of like golden syrup or something like that. And it's only between 13 and 14% sugar. So that's actually a lovely swap in recipes that you can add in on your gut. It's a syrup that comes from fiber. And the fiber is actually really good for your gut. The only thing about it is if you're not used to eating a lot of fiber, you need to like start having that very slowly because you will get wind and gas from it.
Yeah.
But I use it a lot. I think it's great for recipes for kids and things like that. And like I like keto diet stuff as well, but you have to remember as well the keto diet does use sweeteners. You can use natural sweeteners, but there's still
What is the keto diet for anyone listening that is not aware of the?
Oh yeah, yeah. The keto diet basically is, and I use it sometimes for clients to kind of reset their system. And it depends what the person feels able for as well, because sometimes people are like, oh, I want a diet overall. And then sometimes people say, I'm only able for small changes. But if I have somebody coming along to me and like they're not using fat for energy at all, and their body needs to be retrained into using fat for energy to support their metabolism. And if they're suffering from a lot of pain and inflammation in their body and swelling, the keto diet is brilliant for that because it's very anti-inflammatory and it's very low in like oxidative stress on the body. So I love it for that kind of thing. So it's basically what you do is like you take the carbohydrates out, and the hormone, that's your fat storage hormone called insulin, really comes down in response to the no carbohydrates. And once insulin comes to a certain point, your body will switch over to burning fat for energy. And it is a tough diet to start. Like I did it before my wedding to try and lose weight. And I thought that I would just do it for a few months in preparation for my wedding and then I'd stop. But I actually ended up doing it for 3 years because I loved it so much. I felt great on it. I was like, wow, my brain feels amazing. I think like for anybody who has high blood sugar tendencies, when the blood sugar comes down and you feel good, you're like, wow, I feel amazing now and I don't want to stop this feeling.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting pregnant and then I went off the keto diet when I was pregnant. You can actually do the keto diet when you're pregnant. I did look into it and did a lot of research on it. But my body was really craving fruit when I was pregnant and I really wanted to listen to my body. I was like, there's like good nutrients in fruit. Okay, it's not keto friendly, but like maybe my body needs those nutrients. So I went off the keto diet then. But like there's research now about like people using it like to improve egg quality, coming up to fertility treatment, and like it has lots of benefits. The only thing is that for someone maybe who doesn't feel able to go on a strict diet or has maybe a history of eating disorders, it wouldn't be suitable for them.
So some of the other things you would advise implementing, like you mentioned there, would be eating more kind of sustainable meals that will give you energy throughout the day in periods when you are active, but obviously not having those bigger meals when it's closer to bedtime and your body's not going to be moving very much.
That's it.
And then the simple swaps for maybe lower sugar items like the chicory root syrup or the maple syrup or things like that. It's nice kind of simple, manageable swaps for people starting.
Exactly. And you know what? Even, do you know one of the things, because people love their bread, sourdough bread actually has a much lower impact on your blood sugar than regular bread. And if you pair your sourdough bread even with some eggs, then you're getting your healthy fats and your protein, and you're going to have like a way more glycemic or blood glucose friendly breakfast there, especially having protein in the morning. Like the research shows that when people have good quality protein for breakfast in the morning, they actually eat less calories later on in the day. So it is
Your
so good
eggs
for
and your
your
oats.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so good for your metabolism to give your, to have that protein first thing in the morning. It really sets you up for the day. And yeah, it can be simple. Like, I mean, obviously you can do the strict diet, or like it can be simple swaps as well. I'm a real advocate of meet your body where it's at, and see like what you're able for. And you're like this as well, Sinead, because you're like put in some small changes,
Mm.
get the best benefits. Because one of the things is that like I find with clients, women are all or nothing. And like that is like literally just setting yourself up for failure.
Always put too much pressure on ourselves. And yeah, that's when
Yeah.
that brings on more stress because you're trying to reach unattainable goals and then you're upset or you feel negative about yourself and don't reach them. But when they're small and manageable, integrate them slowly and then build on them. It's more sustainable, as you say, and beneficial and less stress.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll tell you, like after I had my little girl, two things that were so simple that really helped me with my energy, right, were just taking my supplements in the morning. And I used to have a cold shower after my hot shower. I love cold water, like just so simple. Between 30 and 90 seconds has been shown to boost your dopamine levels for energy and motivation. Those two things helped start me, implement other healthy things because
Yeah.
they started giving my energy back to me, and the other thing as well that I just really was like, Niamh, I'm banning you from using your phone in bed. Because what was happening to me was that like I was scrolling and I look at the time, I could be 45 minutes, imagine, like on my phone. And I know that if I did do that, like other people are as well. And whereas I would have been tired getting into bed,
Yeah,
be like kind of wired trying to fall asleep. So
totally.
now it's like phone is always on flight mode at night time. And like if I want to go on my phone, like I like even like do you know what I do? Like I go, right, I'm gonna stand in the kitchen on it because I won't stand for long. I don't feel comfortable and I'm not, and if I'll
Yeah,
catch myself in a few minutes and go like, okay, this is uncomfortable, I'm gonna go to bed now.
good
Um,
idea.
but having said that, now sometimes I would catch myself an odd night and go, why did I do that to myself? Because like sleep is so precious, especially when you have a toddler. And what you're doing is you're really interrupting your natural circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is so connected to all of your hormones and your blood sugar response as well. So like those three little simple things, like even can support weight loss, imagine having my cold shower, making sure I was taking my supplements in the morning after breakfast, and stopping scrolling on my phone at night time, like, and just getting an extra up to 45 minutes sleep overnight. It's just
And
so
it
much
all
more.
adds up. Like the good quality sleep, you wake up feeling more rested, more positive about your day. You're more likely to reach for, maybe I'll make myself a smoothie or just have a glass of water. And as you say, the nice kind of cold shower at the end of the hot shower. And you're more likely, your brain is more geared towards positive habits. But when you have that lack of sleep and you feel deprived, your brain, the hormones are like, let's get more energy from somewhere. And it reaches for
Sugar.
coffee,
Yeah.
croissants, and then you get the slump and the laziness during the day, and it doesn't feed well into the balance that you want to create. And it all comes from a good night's sleep. And it's the simple things that we need to come back to, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. Like I have had clients, they're doing everything right. Their diet is really good. Like they could be going to the gym 3 times a week, and they're trying to be perfect, but that actually they don't have really the very basic things in place of having a good night's sleep. You
Yeah.
know, the other thing as well that is actually very good for you is trying to just expose your eyes to sunlight first thing in the morning. And it's because the light in the morning is just a different spectrum than like later on in the day. So even if you're like driving to work, have the window down, if you could like wrap yourself up really well and go out and have your tea outside or your coffee, and like bonus
Put
point,
sunglasses on.
yeah, if you can stick your toes into the grass,
Mm.
you know, they've done studies about grounding and how like it has such a strong anti-inflammatory effect on the body. And when your cells are inflamed, they're going to be in a danger response. And one of the things that they can happen, like when you're in that response, is it doesn't want to let go of weight because it's afraid to let go of weight in case something bad is going to happen. It's going to be holding on to that in case like there's war, famine, or something. So these little practices that don't take much effort, because a lot of the time people are actually very fatigued from having such a busy life, and the thoughts maybe of going to the gym 3 times a week is actually just something that they can't motivate themselves to do, because actually they're so depleted anyway. Would the gym even do anything good for them?
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's that in the evening when the body's trying to wind down, and gentle exercise would be better at that time anyway.
I do
Which
see that a lot, even with my own students, is they would have the healthy habits, you know, that seem on paper wonderful, but there's an overriding kind of stress that's just ticking along in the brain during the day, and that's dragging everything else down. And, you know, the scrolling on the phone for too long, and it's what's giving you energy during the day and what's taking your energy away from you during the day. I think we all need to look at the kind of broader view on that of our day routine and how it adds up. You
I
know,
know it is hard, and I think sometimes as well, like women don't feel very relaxed when they're in the home, because often women will look at the home as a second job, like because they'll be thinking about stuff that men mightn't necessarily think about, like, you know, where the tea towels clean, when do I need to wash the sheets next, you know, or better change the bin in the bathroom, like all those things probably that a man would never think about. And if it's a case like where, you know, you find it very difficult to relax when you're in the house, then try and, you know, to have your class that's outside the house, whatever that is. I know I love yoga, your breath work. There's lovely sound baths now. There's so many lovely things that you can do. I just
something
found it
that's really
amazing.
restorative, that you're not going to have
Yeah,
distractions
yeah,
at home. Yeah, 100%. It's difficult to switch
exactly.
off. The mind is always going, oh, you know, the laundry's done, I have to get that out, or it'll start to smell. And, you know, if there's kids in the house, there's always jobs to be done. I going back to like grounding and just natural light and the really simple things that you can introduce that are free really in your day. And I think that's why maybe like the sea swimming and the cold water dips and immersion has become so popular. And there's like added benefits to those that we may not even realize, like you're on the like the ground, the sand, probably in your bare feet, and you're out in the natural daylight, maybe first thing in the morning. So you're getting that natural daylight into your eyes, and then maybe the cold water as well. And, you know, if you're doing it with other people, there's the community aspect of it. And there's all of these amazing benefits interwoven, and it's free and it's simple. And there's so many things like that we can be doing to kind of support our health and our hormones and our mental health. And it doesn't have to be, as you say, a big overhaul of.
Yeah, or like anything expensive, you know, like I mean, one of the things that I absolutely adore getting done when I get it done, it's such a treat, is acupuncture. But you know, it soon adds up, because most, you know, acupuncture sessions are between 50 and 60 euros.
Mm.
Um, so if you wanted to go, you know, each week for a month, that's 240 euros, and not many people can afford that luxury.
Yeah.
So using those other practices are really going to help make it a little bit more feasible as well.
Yeah. Coming back to your own journey, you mentioned, was it PCOS that you had when you were younger before you started getting into this work?
Yeah, so I actually had symptoms. Now I didn't clock this at the time, but like I had like menopausal symptoms when I was in my 20s. Like I had horrendous PMS, I had terrible insomnia. I started like growing hair where I didn't want to grow it. And I just had all of these crazy symptoms. And actually what was happening to me was like I wasn't ovulating. And that's actually what happens like in perimenopause. You start having these cycles where you don't ovulate as well. And it's this drop in progesterone, which really impacts the mood. Progesterone is such a lovely hormone. It's really calming, and it's really nice, has a really nice action on the brain. It actually acts like kind of an antidepressant. And when progesterone starts dropping, and it actually starts declining when we're 35, you can really notice PMS and things like that start like getting much worse. But sometimes with people with PCOS, you can actually stop ovulating. And at the time of when I was stopping ovulating, imagine it was when actually, because you do associate a PCOS with being overweight, but I was actually my slimmest. But I was going to the gym loads. I was going to the gym loads, and I was creating too much stress for my body, and I was stopping myself ovulating because my body was already very stressed from all this blood sugar imbalance. Like, it was just the icing on the cake then to start doing all this. I was doing loads of cardio as well at the time, which really does push your blood sugars up even more. And I was getting this crazy PMS. And I remember I was in and out to the doctor loads. And like, one of the things we learned in college, like one of your nutritional therapy, is like, you are a teacher to your clients, like you to explain to them, like give them knowledge. Like, it's, you don't get to take a client so that they have to keep coming back to you. Like, you teach them how to do everything themselves and why they're doing it, and like why things are affecting their body, so they become the master of their own hormones, if you like.
Yeah.
But basically, like when I stopped the gym, started putting in some blood sugar support, and started putting in some stress management techniques, I started ovulating again, and like a lot of my symptoms went away. And the more I learned about nutrition, the more I was able to tap in with balancing my hormones. And you know, when I was trying to have a baby then, and I had a fertility scan, she said there was no evidence even of any polycystic ovary disease, which was great.
Yeah.
I was able to manage it through lifestyle and diet. But it's just funny because, like, you know, the doctor was never able to go through anything or explain anything. And eventually when I got diagnosed, he diagnosed me over the phone. He was so blunt. He was like, yeah, you have PCOS. And I was like, well, what do I do? And he was like, well, are you trying to have a baby? And I said, no. And he said, well, just get back to us when you are. And I was like, oh, right. Is there anything else I can do? So that was it. I did actually book in to speak to a female doctor afterwards, and you know, she was like, do you want to go on antidepressants for the PMS? Do you want to go on the pill that will stop it as well? And because I had very bad anxiety as well, because when your blood sugars are crashing and you're really high cortisol, I was an anxious wreck most of the time.
And that creates a loop in itself, doesn't it? When you're experiencing all those symptoms and you're really frustrated and trying your best to do everything to help yourself. And if any, you know, it takes time for these changes to occur. And if you're not seeing the changes, it creates more tension and frustration. And it can be really difficult for anyone suffering any of the symptoms, and they're not sure what it is, and they're not finding the right supports, and they're getting more frustrated with themselves, which makes the symptoms worse. It's just,
Oh, it was terrible. And one of the things that happened to me, and you'd be familiar with this as well, is I had a couple of panic attacks. And talk about a vicious circle. Like, I was already anxious, and anxiety is such a fearful kind of emotion. And then I had a panic attack, and like that made my anxiety so much worse, because I was always afraid I was going to have another panic attack. I was so afraid of having the panic attacks. I was making myself more anxious. So it was such a vicious circle. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I just wish there was somebody who could explain to me why this is happening to my body. And it was so upsetting and
yeah.
so overwhelming. And yeah, it's just a horrible way for a young woman to live. And I'm just so glad that like I went down that road to be able to help people with symptoms like this, because actually, as I said, a lot of them overlap. Sometimes people start getting them in perimenopause as well, and they don't feel good, they feel anxious, mood swings, bad PMS, and to help balance their hormones as well.
When you've experienced it yourself, it's a whole different understanding, you know, rather than just studying it on paper. You've had that experience, you've more empathy and compassion than when you're helping other people, because you've been there, you know. It's a whole deeper understanding. So I'm sure, you know, your clients are benefiting so much from your experience, even though it was hard for you at the time. And like myself, you chose to go down the longer, more difficult path to really figuring out the root cause of it.
Mm. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I suppose it was a hard time, but it probably is what drove me to do nutrition and gave me a passion for my career. So something bad turned out to be something good,
Yeah,
which is kind
definitely.
of nice thing.
Disguised blessings.
Yeah.
Talking about stress and the impact it has, like the brain, the gut, the heart, they're all in communication with each other, and stress has a massive impact, you know, on our physical bodies and our mind, and then interrupts everything else, like the sleep and the diet. And obviously, then hormones are really affected by stress, and fertility and reproductive. And there's the stress receptors from the brain sending messages down to the ovaries and the placenta. And I don't know if people that are struggling with issues realize the levels of stress that they may be under, or are they fully aware of the all the avenues of stress that is coming into their lives, and how they can change or implement more holistic changes in their lives to manage the stress, and therefore help their reproductive systems. And you are supporting couples with fertility. Is stress a big kind of common issue?
Yeah, and you know what? It's very frustrating because when I was going through my fertility journey as well, like so many of my friends were like, you just need to relax and it will happen like a magic wand. And sometimes you need someone to give you those tools to relax. And I think sometimes when you're told like, oh, stress is bad for you, and you're stressed, you kind of bury your head in the sand a bit, try not to deal with it. One thing about stress is that the body like is adaptable to stress. If it's not chronic and absolutely 24/7. So what you want to do is like give it a chance to unplug from the stress. And actually I on my fertility program I have like just even a simple breathing session that you did for me. I think that's amazing. Like just what you're doing is like you're actually just saying to your body, like, okay, you've been stressed all day, we're going to disconnect now. And this is me letting you know that there is actually no war or famine coming. And what can happen, you see, is that the body is very clever. If a war or famine is coming, the body will be like, well, if you get pregnant, if there's a war or famine, like your likelihood of surviving is greatly reduced. So let's just switch off your fertility, so that you don't get pregnant. Or if you have a baby, your likelihood of, that's going to slow you down if you need to travel, and it'll deplete your nutrient stores as well. So I'll just shut down your fertility as well. So, and the thing is that like, there is war and famine going on in the world at the moment. So our bodies will always be adaptable to that. And we have to remember that, are we sending our body these signals? Like that's what chronic stress does, because the body doesn't know the difference between the famous one is a lion chasing you, or you're stuck in a traffic jam. So you really want to just be a little bit more mindful of like just cruising through the whole day being really stressed out.
Mm.
And like just taking little snippets to have a few breaths, like
Yeah.
obviously I'm preaching to the choir here, but or on my program there's a few different modalities depending on what people feel like works for them, like a short little yoga or a stretch, breath work. EFT, I absolutely love EFT as well. And that's a tapping technique where you use the energy meridians and to help with stress, and you say positive affirmations at the same time as well. And hypnotherapy, any kind of meditation, anything like that is lovely if you feel like you can relax at home. But you can do breathing anywhere. That's what I love. You can do it like
Yeah,
in the car.
do it with you anywhere.
Yeah, so that's why like I think that's just one of the probably the most simplest things that you can use.
I do
Um
find though with people that I've worked with, often they're caught in the chronic stress loop and are completely unaware of it because it's just become the norm. And
yeah.
even in one of my sessions recently with a company, um, I asked them just to list some signals in the body that might be telling them that they're stressed. And one man asked me, he couldn't understand the question, he did not know what I was talking about, and couldn't answer it. He was just dumbfounded. What do you mean signals in the body from stress? And I said to him, there can be symptoms or things can manifest in the body that's created from stress. The list is endless, headaches and pains in the body and shortness of breath and anxiety and sleep and digestion, and it can all be affected. And he said, no, I don't have any signals of stress in the body. And I said, well, you're either like a complete Zen Buddhist monk that's just living on top of a mountain and not experiencing any stress, or you're disconnected from your body and you really need to, take time out and listen. And it was like the first time he'd ever heard it. I said, do you ever stop to relax? Oh yeah, I do. I go out with friends and I watch movies. And I said, no, but it's, different to actually stop and listen. And it can be very uncomfortable if you're not used to it. But would you say that's, a top priority for people that are experiencing any issues with their fertility or reproductive issues? Listen.
Definitely, women in general, I think, can experience that. Like I think it's very difficult for people on a fertility journey, like, to disconnect from the stress, because they're on a journey that is like, they're reminded every day, like, that they're trying to have this baby. So it's very difficult for them. I think I'm thinking now, like, about my weight loss clients, because I find with them, they always say to me, Niamh, like, you tell me what to do, like, because they want me to give them the answers. But I'm like, well, you need to look inwards to your body to see what your body needs. And they can't tell me. But a lovely thing is to put on some nice music, get a notebook, listen, lie down, take a few deep breaths just to relax yourself and think, like, what does my body need? Is there anything that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis that, like, is not helping me to achieve my goal, because
Just checking in.
yeah, checking in with their body, like, and again, like, for me, I actually did that practice, and that's when I was like, Niamh, you need to stop scrolling on your phone at nighttime, and sometimes as well, like, I find like that I might let the weekend go past without having a proper food shop. So, like, I'm like, when I want to go and get something healthy out of the fridge, I'm like, what am I going to eat here now?
Yeah.
I think that's really important to be organized as well. But what will help me? And instead of trying to ask somebody else, like, obviously I can educate people and I can tell them, like, let's do this, balance your blood sugars, but really, like, taking the time to connect in with yourself and see what is your body yearning for the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will tell you. It will tell you if you listen. It'll give.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like, somebody did ask me that before, like, what do you want? And I was like, oh, I don't know, because, like, after having the baby, I feel like everything is about the baby.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm trying to do at the moment as well, as, like, connecting to what, like, I feel I need for myself now, because, like, she's getting a little bit older and I'm feeling like I have a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what do I need now? Like, I'm trying to, like, listen to myself. I think that's very important.
Yeah. It's a difficult practice, an easy thing to do, but a difficult one to master. Like the
Yeah.
breathing and like integrating the habits. They're simple and they're easy, but you just have to practice, have patience and practice it and keep showing up and doing those things. For anyone that is on a fertility journey at the minute and is finding it difficult to get pregnant, apart from checking in and trying to eliminate as much stress as they can and integrating more restorative things to calm the body, like breathing and acupuncture and whatever else, what about diet or other tips or advice that you might have for them to enhance fertility?
So when it comes to fertility, usually the recommended advice is, if you've been trying for 6 months and you're over 35 years of age, you should seek support. And if you're under 35 and you've been trying over a year, you should seek support. Now, I always think, like, you know, it is good to have like a gynae who'd be treating things very traditionally, like a doctor would, which is assessing things, assessing symptoms, checking, diagnosing, and then medicating. And then maybe somebody like myself who be like very much more holistic, like, here's some tools to manage your stress. Here are foods that will help you optimize your egg quality. Let's look after your gut health and your microbiome, and like really kind of help balance and reset everything. And I suppose I feel like I wouldn't be trying to do the doctor's jobs or anything, but I think like there are like bloods you can get from the GPs even before you go in to see the consultant to see. Like, I'd have clients and you know, possibly they mightn't even be ovulating. And like, if they don't know how to check properly if they're ovulating, obviously you can get like a test strip in the supermarket, but you need to check 7 days after that to see if your progesterone is high enough to indicate if you ovulated. And because the test strips actually only check for this hormone called luteinizing hormone, which peaks just before you ovulate. And that'll happen even if you don't ovulate, actually. So you are checking like around the time like that you would expect yourself to ovulate, and you might get a positive LH, but you need to check your progesterone. So what can happen a lot of the time with clients is like basically they mightn't be ovulating, or their progesterone is too low for the egg to implant, and they wouldn't get pregnant unless they get support. So just little tips like that. I kind of have a full module on my online program about like when to test, what levels you should be looking at, when to ask for support, like for further support. But thank God now actually the HSE has some free support as well, so that like you can be, I think people are afraid to ask for it because maybe they don't want to go down the IVF route. But actually the great thing is that like even before they'll recommend you do IVF or anything like that, they'll do a good bit of testing beforehand to see why you haven't been getting pregnant. So it's great just to, you can start getting the ball rolling by talking to your GP, getting your blood tests done, looking after your egg and sperm quality, trying to manage your stress as best you can. The one thing I would say is that like when you are, actually it's lovely being pregnant, but then when the baby comes along, like you're so sleep deprived and depleted, and like then a lot of people go back to work, life gets so much more hectic. So you need to be able to look after yourself for that and have these practices in place. So it's something that you want to return to when life stops being so crazy when you have a newborn. So that's really important as well. But I would like kind of like take a stance of educating, empowering clients as well. Like 50% of the time there's male factor infertility. So I mean, women a lot of the time put like a lot of the blame on themselves. So we really need to get those two couples working together to support each other and making sure both of them are healthy as well. There's so many things when it comes to fertility. And I heard a quote before and I was like, oh my God, yes, this just makes so much sense to me. Like 15% of couples will experience problems with fertility, right? So it's so common. But if you think about it, like pregnancy is like Everest in utero, which means like it is actually a massive thing for your body to do. And you wouldn't go thinking I'm going to climb Mount Everest now and not put any preparation in, like for like, you know, to prepare your body to be in the best health possible. And usually when you do that, like getting pregnant is going to be much easier. Or if say, for example, you do get offered that free round of IVF at the HSC, that you'll have a much higher chance of that working because you've done so much work beforehand to get your egg quality up, to get the sperm quality up, to get the environment where the egg has to implant really healthy as well. And like in IVF, they give you progesterone because in the studies they see that like when women get progesterone after IVF treatment, that there's a much higher success rate. And that just shows you actually that there's so many women that do need progesterone support, because progesterone is the hormone that's most affected by stress. And that's the hormone that the body will shut down if you're stressed, to stop you getting pregnant.
So would people actually take a progesterone supplement themselves if they knew that they were low in it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of vitamins and nutrients and herbs you can take if your progesterone is low. But if your progesterone is through the floor, though, that is an indication that you're not ovulating at all. And then you might just need a little bit more support in ovulating. So with progesterone, usually you're supporting the second half of the cycle. If it's a bit lower than we'd like it,
Yeah.
but if it's totally tanked, that means that the support really needs to be targeted at the start of the cycle when the egg is developing, because it's actually the corpus luteum, which is actually the shell of the egg when you ovulate, that produces the progesterone. So you want to make sure that that corpus luteum is really healthy. And one of the things that can really damage that corpus luteum is high blood glucose. Imagine, isn't that interesting? And
Mm.
it can, because it has an oxidizing effect on the cells, can damage the corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum is not able to produce much progesterone, or sometimes like they mightn't release the egg at all, or they might release an empty egg. It just depends. But like working on egg quality is really going to help support ovulation.
Yeah, I did read a study about, it was done on mice and rats and put under chronic stress for, I think, 2 or 3 months, and they seen the egg count go down, and they seen the reproductive organs all suffer from that. And again, we forget that everything is linked, and we think, oh, sure, it should be fine, it should be easy, but often there's other factors that we may not be considering. And what about sex? Having sex, trying for a baby, is there a good time? Is it just any chance you get?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast actually recently, and he was talking about connection and sex being so good. It's so good for stress. Like if when you're having sex, like you're not thinking about, well, usually most people are not thinking about
Be.
stuff that's on their mind. They're actually releasing loads of hormones. It really relaxes their brain, and especially if you have an orgasm. So it actually is really good. He was saying that, like, if you're having quality time with your partner, if you only have like half an hour to watch a bit of TV in the evening time, he was saying, like, don't do that every evening. Try and just go to bed early and have sex, because it'd be so much better for your connection with them, getting your human touch in, then for relaxation, and then like all those endorphins you release when you're having sex, like so good. And like what can happen with partners, like, look, if you're perimenopausal, or if you're trying to have a baby, you end up like trying to really target the sex around one time in the month, and then the rest of the month, like, you nearly go off sex because it's becoming such a chore. But I think that, like, the one thing I always think is that, like, you always enjoy sex when you have it, even if you don't feel like it. Like in the end, it always ends well, I think. Well, if you have a good partner, anyway, so that you're not being left.
It
What
should be enjoyable.
yeah, exactly. So I think it is good. Like I definitely would recommend trying to have sex more if you're not having sex enough. Sometimes if like during menopause and stuff, if you're getting any dryness down there, balancing your hormones is going to help balance all of that out. And there's a time of the month, basically coming up to day 14. I mean, people ovulate on different days. It could be like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18. But what you'll notice a few days before you ovulate is you'll start getting some fertility mucus. And that's the best time to have sex if you're planning to have a baby. I do think it's a good idea to check your ovulation as well, because I was assuming I was ovulating on day 14, and I wasn't actually ovulating until day 18 when we first started trying. And I think there could have been 4 or 5 months where we were like having sex from day 11 to 14 and stopping then on day 14. And then I was ovulating 4 days later,
Okay.
so we were nearly missing our window there.
That's
So
when
I
it
think,
really comes down to, again, your message of empowering yourself, because, the general advice, it can't go to every woman's reproductive system and every man's, because, you're dealing with so many different factors, so many different people. And then there's, as you say, it's a couple as well that's creating the baby, hopefully. There's two systems meeting
yeah,
together, so it's going to be different for everyone.
yeah, I think
For
so. It's good.
anyone that's experienced a miscarriage, and is maybe thinking of trying to get pregnant again. Firstly, have you any advice for a woman that has experienced a miscarriage? And then do you have like, is there a window amount of time where you should wait until you try again, or is it all personal to each?
Yeah, it can be very personal to everyone, especially, depending on when you had the miscarriage. If it's early, before the first, say, 2 months, there's not much development there yet. So there wouldn't be much tissue lost, because the more tissue you lose, actually the more nutrients you're losing. If it's later, it is going to be harder.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the things, I actually did reach out to a few friends and found out that, like, people were saying like, why did miscarriage as well, Niamh, but they had never told me.
Mm.
So I think it's good, if you have friends with kids, to talk to them, because you'll be so surprised about like who'll come forward and say, actually, I had a miscarriage as well.
Yeah.
Um, so the most common reason they say for miscarriages is chromosomal abnormalities. And when I had two actually miscarriages, but after my first one, I was like, okay, that's normal. And then when I had the second one, actually, I was like, okay, now I'm really worried there's something wrong. And then I was like, right, I'm going to get some help. And I actually tried to reach out to a gynae, two different gynaes. One of them, I actually said to them, I think it could be to do with my progesterone. They were like, we'll just come back when you're pregnant. I was just had this feeling that was going to be too late though. So I went to another gynae and she was like, oh, definitely, it's definitely your progesterone. But interestingly, the second gynae asked me so much questions about my cycle and my history, whereas the first one didn't ask me any questions at all, or why I thought it was my progesterone. I just didn't feel listened to at all. So it's so important to get in front of the right gynae. Like if you feel like your gynae is not listening to you, move gynaes. Like you don't have to stick with that person.
Mm.
And then she was like, you definitely need progesterone. So I was actually so lucky, I have to say, that like I found out why I was having the miscarriages. And it's really hard when you don't know, because you feel, I think the words would be like very unsafe, because everything is so out of your control. And I used to like kind of have affirmations stuck up to try and calm myself. But coming up to my period, like every time, it's the same for everyone who's trying. You'll be so anxious and just worried and a bit PMSy as well. But what I would say is that, I mean, my only experience I can comment on is because I've had an early miss, not a later one. I feel like just give yourself a month or two to process it, and actually even letting yourself have a natural period is going to naturally reset your hormones, so it'll help you feel better, a
Yeah.
little bit better in relation to hormones. Um, I think it's important to look for help. So in my clinic, like I have seen people like having miscarriages because of progesterone, but more commonly with low progesterone you can't get pregnant at all. But the thing is, like, I was trying for so long, 3 years before I got pregnant even. So but it wasn't happening. It was because of the low progesterone. And I think in clinic though, for the most common reason I see is an imbalance in the vaginal microbiome. So if you think like the vaginal microbiome should be 95% the lactobacillus family, and like we would have had like things like loads of raw milk in our diet and things like that, that would have been giving us loads of good quality lactobacillus. Um, and now we don't have the same stuff. Like, so unless you're really looking after your gut, um I love, actually, I really promote people to drink kefir when they're preparing for pregnancy, because that's like one of the food's most highly concentrated
Yeah.
lactobacillus, and it moves across
Very
the body.
popular now. It's in all the
Oh, it's
supermarkets.
brilliant. Yeah.
So widely available for people.
It is, but the homemade one is actually the best one,
Yeah.
because it has over 2,000 strains of good bacteria, whereas the shop bought ones only has about 10. And I don't love that, like they're all stored in plastic.
Yeah.
Um, the homemade one, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. I
Yeah.
like, actually, everyone on my online program gets free kefir grains. I'm like, do these now with your kefir
Kefir for
grains.
everyone. But it's the
Yeah,
same, even
exactly,
going back to
exactly.
the bread, because the over processed bread that's available in the supermarkets and that looks fresh for 3 months is so bad for your gut. But then when you go to the sourdough or baking your own bread, it's
Yeah.
going to be easily processed in your body and through your gut. So the less processed, I guess, we have, the more gut.
Exactly. So yeah, I see that like when people have like had a lot of miscarriages, if you've had, definitely, I wouldn't jump maybe to it straight away, say like, well, maybe it's the microbiome, but actually it's just something, it's a little test that you can do. It's around like about €270. Um, it's actually included in my microbiome package for fertility. It's one where like we look at your vaginal microbiome, we look at your diet to optimize egg and sperm quality and your stress, and we have 2 kind of power hours at meet where we try and figure out like what's your next step and what might be stopping you.
Great service. It's like fascinating to find out what's going on in your own body, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. But some particular families of bacteria are really associated with inflammation. And what happens is that anything that's inflamed, once something starts growing there, it's going to put pressure on the tissues, and the immune system is not going to like it, and it can just reject it. One of the things I suppose that helps me with dealing with a miscarriage as well is that I had a lovely lady when she scanned me, and she kind of described it as like when you're having a miscarriage, it's not just something dying, like, because you think something dying is just something being killed or something, but she said it's just like for an early miscarriage is cells dividing, and then they just really slow down and stop, and then all the hormones will drop, and then you'll get your period. And I suppose it's different though, because anytime later than that, like, it is starting to become like a proper fetus, proper baby. So it's very, it has to be harder for people who have had miscarriages later on. But I think just to say that that helped me a little bit deal with it, and just give myself that time to grieve and like for my hormones to come back. I still was crazy with anxiety every time it was the week before my period, but
Yeah.
um I kind of felt it was strange, because I actually felt very strong after going through that and coming out the other side. Like, I felt like, oh my God, women are amazing, we're so strong. And I felt really connected to my partner, like, for how much he supported me as well. Um, and like, I actually afterwards I thought like, God, that was awful to go through, and it was so upsetting. But like, I was like, oh my God, now I know what women go through. And if I never had a miscarriage, I would never know what women go through. And I think it's really important for me working in this area to actually know
Yeah.
what they go through. So in a way, I wouldn't take it back.
Yeah, it's an amazing mindset to have around it, and to realize, the strength that we do have. And as you say, it's very common. I know a lot of women that have had multiple miscarriages, and I suppose it should be easy to just be open about and discuss with each other and our partners, or other men in our lives, because it can be part of life.
Yeah, it definitely is a big part of life. And I think, one of the things like, oh, don't tell anybody that like you're pregnant until after 12 weeks in case you have a miscarriage. It's really kind of cementing into us that like, having a miscarriage is so bad.
Yeah.
I actually, because when I got pregnant for the first time, like, even though I did have a miscarriage, I was so excited. I just wanted to tell everyone, and I just felt like, God, it's very hard for women that they can't. But I definitely think talking to your friends, you'd be so surprised, like, that somebody will, say to you, like, I've had a miscarriage as well. And like, I found now that, like, when I was telling my friends, that more of them said that they had a miscarriage than had said not. And like, the only way that you'll find out is if you actually open up. Or even like a friend who maybe didn't have a miscarriage would be like, oh, my mum had one, or my sister had one. And actually does help. Talking about it will help you process the trauma, which is very important. But also, like, if you think about, the most common reason is chromosomal abnormalities, and most of them would be non-genetic as well. So how do you prevent them is like actually just making sure that your egg and sperm health is the best quality possible. And then like maybe looking at your microbiome health as well. So that's going to help reduce your risk. So I do work with clients like who maybe had, like, I've worked with clients who've had 5 miscarriages in a row, 7 miscarriages in a row, and went on then and had a healthy pregnancy. And like, that's what we'd be working on. Now, usually I would say to them, like, talk to their gynae only certain gynaes will do this, but immune related infertility, like maybe talk to your gynae and see if this could be an issue. Usually with the immune related infertility, there will be other symptoms present as well, like maybe somebody like has a lot of kind of reactive symptoms, like maybe they have hay fever, they have asthma, they have bad eczema. You can see that there's
kind of inflammation in the body.
Yeah, active inflammation, allergies or even chemicals, anything like that. Or autoimmune antibodies in the thyroid. I'd be like, yeah, definitely we need to get you in front of an immunologist as well. You might just need an extra bit of support.
Yeah.
We'll also look at the microbiome and the optimizing the egg and sperm quality. Unfortunately, fertility is not simple. Like a lot of the time I have to say to clients, like, okay, we found this big red flag here. The man, like the male, has problems with his sperm. We can't stop there. We need to keep working on you as well, because actually there's probably a 50% chance that the woman is involved as well if we find something with the man. So we want to make sure that, like, while he's working on his sperm, we're ruling out anything else, if you know what I mean. So I would have people coming in with multiple stuff coming on. There could be problems with his sperm, problem with their microbiome, and because a lot of couples are eating a similar diet, there could be egg quality stuff as well going on. So we'll be working on everything together.
Would you take a sample of the male sperm, and then is it like a swab of the vagina for the microbiome?
Yeah, you can actually get a semen microbiome test done as well. I don't recommend that as routinely as the vaginal one, but what we would do is, like, say for example, if a woman came back and she had like multiple infections, I'd be like, right, and he had poor sperm quality, I'd be like, probably you're sharing some microbes. We need to look at if that's affecting his sperm quality, especially if he changes his diet and we're not seeing any improvements in the sperm. We're like, let's look at his, because an infection down there, and it's not even, be more like an imbalance. Basically, your good guys are going to be creating all these anti-inflammatory compounds, keeping the immune system really calm, and the bad guys are going to be really aggravating the immune system and creating a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress. That's what damages the sperm. That's what predisposes you to like miscarriage risk. Even like if, you know, the miscarriage risk wasn't there, working on your microbiome, like especially the woman, because she used to carry the baby, like that's what the baby is going to be exposed to. You can either be putting them into like a toxic inflamed area or like a really lovely anti-inflammatory, like abundant and good bacteria, and then that's what they're going to be getting a mouthful of during the birth, you know. So you're really going to be seeding their gut like with lovely microbes instead of, you know, bad ones. So
get the flower bed nice and prepared to plant the lovely flowers.
Exactly. The uterus is going to be so much more receptive, and it's going to be nice and calm. So there's multiple factors that with fertility. One of the things I think, like my online program is really comprehensive, and there's kind of upgrades if you want to do your microbiome test, and if you want to do like have some time with me, because I do think, like, you know, a lot of the time I'd have like put together online programs before. They've like worked amazingly for people. But sometimes I think with fertility, you need an outside eye just to be like, join all the dots for you. Something that somebody else might see that you don't see. Like, and it might just even take just like, you know, chatting, somebody talking to you about your case history, and like somebody listening to you, because like you might go in for a consultation with the gynae, but like if you get 15 minutes, like you're lucky. They, as I said, like the first person I went to never even asked me my history about my cycle. The second person like was way more interested.
The female cycle will give us so much information about our health. Like, I've known people that listen to what the signals and the symptoms that our bodies are giving us, if we're so busy that we can't see them or hear them, then we miss the signals, and then they become louder and louder, and then they're harder to get back from. And just coming back to balance.
Implementing simple things. So that's basically what it's about. And I know that like you are always promoting, you know, simple strategies that you can include daily as well, like just to kind of make things easier.
I love your message, Niamh, about empowering people to look after their own health and implement the easy, simple things, and not a, you know, complete crazy overhaul that will create more stress. Thank you so much for all of your time and wisdom and information. Where can we find you on Instagram and your website if we want to check in more with you?
On Instagram and Facebook, I'm Niamh Burke Nutrition. My website is actually thehappyhormoneclinic.com though.
Happyhormoneclinic.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. It was lovely chatting to
Thank
you.
you. I could have chatted to you for another hour, but we're I think we've time enough for this episode anyway. Maybe we'll have you back for another one.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Niamh.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that empowering conversation with Niamh. You can find more about her at Niamh Burke Nutrition or happyhormoneclinic.com. You can find more about me and my events at moveandbreathe.ie on social media and my website.